As we talk, many people are dying in Ukraine from the Russians flying in the air. Why are the Western powers not rushing in to impose a no-flying zone and keep the Ukraine sky safe? The point is not really about imposing a no-flying zone in Ukraine, as it is upholding the law, which means shooting down the Russian fighters, thereby dragging NATO and the United States into a full-scale war with Russia. If you understand a bit of international politics, you will quickly realize that many successive US administrations since the era of Cold War have been trying to avoid this singular act. We will talk about this much later.
A no-fly zone is an imaginary condition in which the United States would be able to prevent anything Russian from entering the airspace of Ukraine. Any Russian plane, any Russian missile. To do that, the United States would have to shoot down Russian planes and somehow intercept Russian missiles in flight. The accurate description of what people mean by a no-fly zone is actually an aerial combat zone. But aerial combat zone sounds like a place where people get killed, including American pilots, and it is. And so the antiseptic, imaginary term no-fly zone is used instead. A no-fly zone has never been imposed anywhere in the world in the middle of a hot war with a nuclear-armed military superpower like Russia. The Germans bombed London for over a year before the United States even entered World War II, and the only way we established a no-fly zone anywhere in Europe in World War II was by defeating the German army, which we could not have done at the time without the help of the Russian army, which suffered more losses in World War II than any other army. And so, in the Oval Office in the Situation Room, when President Biden is presented with the choice of watching the Russians attack Ukraine from the air, where they are meeting some resistance now from Ukrainian pilots and Javelin missiles, and trying to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine, everyone in the room knows that that means American pilots shooting down Russian pilots and Russian pilots shooting down American pilots. They just don't know exactly how many pilots from each country will be killed and how quickly they will be killed. And everyone in the White House discussing this knows that that would change a war between Russia and Ukraine into a war between Russia and the United States. And then no one knows what happens after that.
Now, I understand what you are thinking. They did it before in Iraq. Yes, we know that in 1991, during the Gulf War, the US, UK, France, and Turkey managed to establish no-fly zones in Iraq. Not just one, but two. And the reason was to protect the civilian, the Kurds in the north and Shia in the south, who could be attacked by the Iraqi government, so they said. It happened also in Libya in 2011. Exactly on the 19th of March 2011, a NATO-led coalition began their military operation in Libya. This, you will know, was to implement the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1917 and 1973. It was actually UN Resolution 1973 that established the no-flying zone, a ban on all flights in the airspace of Libya so they could protect the civilians. Yes, they did protect those they wanted to protect in Libya after helping them to destroy their country and turning it into a quagmire it has become today. Looking at what Libya has become today, a torture camp for thousands of young Africans, would you say that the NATO coalition and their Western military industrial enterprises did not succeed in what they refer to as Operation Odyssey Dawn? Well, it depends on who you ask. We all have different objectives, and the Western military intervention in Libya was never really a mistake. Yes, the no-flying zone and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Sorry for the digression. I was only carried away trying to imagine the pain and torture many Africans have gone through and are still going through in Libya as a result of the Western military maneuvering, fly zone or no-fly zone. Well, war is a game, and it has always been, and the bigger military industrial complexes will always benefit from it. As the adage has it, only the dead have seen the end of war. Now, to tell you what you already know, It's not that the United States or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is afraid of an all-out war with Russia. Sure, the US and NATO do have the military capability and with almost all certainty can defeat Russia in a war. But make no mistake about this, Russia is a different kind of animal in the forest. The possible collateral damage is too serious to permit any hasty decision. I want to believe that the Western military tacticians know what they are doing and must be extremely careful about their decision, because the real consequence of taking on Russia might be too scary to say the least. Russia not only have all the major Western European cities within the reach of its military arsenal, Rome, Frankfurt, Berlin, Paris, even the United States are within its reach. Russia, according to a BBC article, have some 5,976 nuclear warheads, which can be broken down into 1,185 intercontinental ballistic missiles, 800 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and air-launched from nuclear missiles. That surpassed the United States, UK, and France put together at 5,943 nuclear warheads. This military capability, excluding several hundreds of other lurking around in the world, can evaporate the city and the civilization we have built till date, and maybe leave behind a few million or thousands of human zombies in some isolated parts of the world. This is serious, and this is what we are talking about. War is a game, and it can quickly become confusing and out of control once started. So when Mr. Biden, the US president, appeared reluctant to declare a no-fly zone on Ukraine, that might not be a sign of weakness after all, but for the possible consequences that could ensue. What is my recommendation? Well, it was better if we didn't start, because after you take the life of someone, it is difficult to plead innocent, and the negotiation, though it is the only solution, will always become more difficult because life is costly. September 2nd, 1945 was when World War II ended, with a horrible human slaughter in Europe especially. Between then and now, it's 77 years, and it is about the longest period that a so-called civilized world has been enjoying peace. That 77 years period led to a lot of development, both scientifically and technologically. Not to talk of the toxic political ideology which seems to have been reducing lately. Peace is better than war, and the building of schools and business infrastructure is better than destroying the same. The people of Ukraine need life and respect for their territorial integrity. So if a no-fly zone is not possible, then what else must be done to put an end to the war? This human onslaught needs to stop.